Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and I'm pulling a hat trick with Mattel's DC Comics Multiverse line to take a look at the Arkham City version of Azrael, loyal servant of the Order of St Dumas, and herald of a somewhat anticlimactic subplot in the video game. Let's see if this figure can do more than his digital counterpart, as far as satisfaction is concerned. I mean, really, just, oh, it's a prophecy. Anyway, bye. I can't believe all that stupid searching in the toy. More of a Mr. Freeze than a Batman in the appearance department, Azrael's rocking a pretty hardcore sculpt for his stature. There is a ton of detail in here, from chainmail mesh to a tattered tunic, with plenty of straps and armor plates for garnish. He's even got his flaming sword deal and twin 3-strip shoulder capes. Like Batman, Azrael's got an impressively tiny set of eyeball paint applications. Once again, try and see one in person if you're going to buy him so you don't end up with a cross-eyed crusader. Overall, he's got pretty good paintwork, though I wish there was some weathering on at least the white parts. They're way bright and a bit too clean looking. That and there's a hole in the front of his tunic that's been entirely ignored as far as painted detail, and it's super bugging me for some reason. Azrael's got a two-part accessory in the form of a sword and scabbard that I don't think he actually used in Arkham City. Nonetheless, both pieces serve their functions well, and the intensely gummy sword has actually got a gunmetal sheen to its plastic. So you see all this sculpting here, and all these these look like cuts in the biceps, and all this stuff that could hide some cleverly made articulation. None of it's doing that because he's pretty much as posable as Batman, and his head is a little bit worse, as it only swivels, and it does that dumb thing where the swivel is a diagonal cut, so he kind of has to like cock his head dementedly sideways to look left and right, which looks dumb. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna state the blatantly obvious. He's got a cut waist. He's got those really good shoulders. There's one thing this line has done well so far. It is shoulders, and the shoulder pads and these cape thingies are all made from the same really good material as Batman's cape. His elbows, however, this elbow actually bends pretty well. I'm gonna give him some credit where it's due. And given that it is like hooked into this whole assembly that with another plastic would limit the articulation, thanks to using this really good flexible plastic, this arm bends really nicely. It's got a wrist swivel, etc. This arm does too, but this big piece of armor really gets in the way, and it's not quite as tight as this arm over yonder, which is kind of a bummer, because this is where the open hand is to, wave his sword around, and I'm trying to be as fair as I can, but I just find this disappointing that I can't even... I want him to stick his arm to one side and point his sword, and now his head's all diagonal, and his sword's sticking in a funny direction, and the sculpt is leaving this big juicy spot right here for a bicep cut, and it is not using it. Bummer. His hips are universal joints, and they've got a decent range. They've got pretty much Batman's range, so you can't really sit this guy into a Batmobile or anything if they do make one. Ideally they won't, because I don't think it would turn out all that well. But this loincloth piece is actually a bit stiffer than the cape stuff, so it really would not play very well with him having to sit in a chair. However, it doesn't get in the way of the legs, which is nice. It's just flexible enough to work with the tightness of the hip joints and prevent him from being really leg-locked. You also notice this thing is really sliding around in here. That just happens. His knees are alright. They're alright. There's no ankles or anything. He's got thighs, which is good. The thighs help a lot, but they also just make me wish he had biceps. And yeah, this is 3 for 3 of... I mean, this guy I think pulls it off the best. His posability isn't excellent, but at least he's got all this accoutrement on him that kind of helps distract from the issue. And if you have him in a kind of awkward pose, there's all this stuff hanging from him, which kind of pulls your eye away from the way that he's almost standing properly, or that his arms are almost dynamic. Azrael's probably my favorite of the three as far as posability goes, but that's not saying much. I'm viciously disappointed in this DC Multiverse line. Everything I've seen from the other figures out right now, Bane, Deadshot, etc., doesn't really quell any of my issues. In fact, they look worse. I'm not super pumped about the sculpts and figures I'm really looking forward to in this line, like the Keaton Batman movie guys, or this line is a bummer. Wasted potential. It's not living up to the huge adult collector words that are floating over the head of every figure, and I'm just going to go into a pre-written dissertation now before I ramble and have Beta Ray Bill fly in and clock this dude over the head with a god hammer. Azrael comes real close with his delightful asymmetry and balanced mix of paint colors and applications. His various pieces of overhanging costumery help smooth out the awkwardness of his posability. But when all is said and done, I come away feeling like I've got the top dog in a bottom-feeding dog pound. Azrael's an alright action figure, but certainly can be overshadowed by a number of other toy lines and their offerings. And that's the sad conclusion I have when I look at the DC Comic Multiverse line. It has strong sculpts, but flat and uninspired engineering. It wants to be an adult collector line that's featured at mass retail, but comes off as a kid's line wearing a very fancy hat that's 2 sizes too large. Even in the case of a competent figure like Azrael, when I hold DC Comics Multiverse up to its peers, lines like Marvel Universe or G.I. Joe, I admit I need some more experience in 4-inch scale lines outside of Hasbro, it simply ain't where it needs to be. If you aren't after dense engineering or are happy with an enhanced Kenner-style basic 6 points of articulation, you'll probably find this line a lot more palatable than I did. But to me, it's making a half-hearted attempt to be something that it certainly is not. I mean, the argument can be made that it's trying for a retro spin, but why didn't it market itself that way? Why did it have adult collector in huge letters over top of the figure? Mixed messages, man. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and that's all I've got to say about the DC Multiverse line for now. Hey, chin up, King Matty. At least those He-Man toys are neat.